Okay, Coleson cluster is one of the Lake End Village communities, and a young couple was walking on the path one day, asked me if I knew anything about that cluster. I said I do, and they said, "Well, what do you know about it?" I said, "I think it's the best cluster in Reston," and that couple now live in this cluster. It's Harris Finkelstein and his wife Kate, and their new son. And so when he finally got here, he said, "Well, Pat, you were wrong. It's not the best in Reston. It's the best in the world." And I know why. And so I'm going to share with you some background on that, because I know there's been a lot of negative, or at least emails flying around about, concern about this, concern about that, concern about this, concern about that. Well, I'm glad to see that people are finally, again, involved. Now, the key to making this cluster as nice as a place as it is twofold. One, it had a very broad range of uses, types of housing. It had 4-bedroom, 3,000 square feet units available for families. Is that the combination of the very large units for, suitable for large families, including families of 6, of which we had several, on each of the corners, and the elevator shafts, which were suitable for single people, because they were, or people without children. That mix of families gave this place the diversity that made it active. Active it was, because in the early days of this cluster, well, let me go back a minute and say, this happened to be the last cluster that Reston Land developed. And they got out of the townhouse business after they sold 16, what's now the Dalton unit, which is the one we bought on a fire sale. And when they stopped doing this, then they went to the single family detached on the other side of town. And so this was a cluster that had a unique role in its history of Reston. It also attracted some very interesting people. And among those that were here is that we had the president of the RA, who was the one that made the RA into one group. It used to be two, one on this side, one on that side. Then we also had the president and then vice president of RCA, Gene Berghoff, and myself in terms of the latter. A few other celebrities that we had here that were making things happen in Reston is that we had the people that initiated the Black Focus Festival, and also we had the Reston Players personnel in this cluster. And people that have been active in many ways in Reston. We had the editor of the Reston Times, Robert Dawson, and we all got together around the pool, the deck of the pool, and talked about the future of Reston. And some interesting things came out as a result of that. It was here that the idea for cable TV got matured, because we used to have a single antenna, and the cable TV is what RCA urged the Warner people to do. So that was one of the other advantages of this cluster. And I will go further in that. In the early days of this cluster, neighbors helped neighbors do almost everything. And we had a program to, because Mr. Berghoff was a forester, and so he advised us that if we found ourselves rented an auger and augered a hole around the mature first growth oaks that the developer left, and other kinds of trees, that we would give them a longer life, because we could fertilize in those augered holes for deep root feeding. And so that was something that was done to protect the older trees. Which are still in good shape. At one time also we brought a bulldozer in and reshaped the circle of the hill and made that into a nice garden. It has since gone in a different way. That's a little history in this cluster. Now let's talk about the future. We have this is Earth Week, and we have the opportunity of turning this cluster into something that is more green than it has been in the past, because we do have flat roofs, and on those flat roofs we can collect water, and that collected water can be reused and or filtered and sent down to the stream, or reused here in the cluster for watering plants and whatever, with rain barrels. Or more, another idea would be to collect the water on the road that I'm in, 1600 and on up to what used to be the Fullers. I don't know the numbers, but we could collect the water from those downspouts and take it over to the front end of this cluster and make it into a water garden or a rainforest, which would give a different appearance to this cluster. And those projects that are like barn raising, where people get together and they share and they learn, and we find that we've had some interesting people in this cluster. Beyond those I just mentioned, we've also had some strong intellectuals that have been active in the college system and education. We have an architect who has a son that is an architect. In fact, is a noted architect, is on the faculty of the University of Notre Dame and is publicized very often. So it's time for this cluster to get together and say, okay, let's do something good for us, because tomorrow is yet to, instead of the environment going down, why don't we do what we can to move it up? So those are ideas that we should consider for the future of this cluster, because there are good people living here, and let's reach out together with each other so we learn more about each other. We learn that people like me, for example, I'm trained as an architect, and in my career have been very involved in developing management plans for military family housing communities. In fact, the handbook that I wrote was applicable to Army housing worldwide. And so I'm offering this knowledge that I have to the cluster and or to any of the individual units. Because at one time Berghoff and I talked and we said, you know, our properties adjoin each other. Why don't we landscape them as if they are one? And we make it more park-like, which is something that was done on the path just after you cross the Van Gogh Bridge, headed into Lake Anne. Those properties there, co-landscape. That's a technique that we could do more of in this cluster. And I need help, and so I'm willing to help others. But when you see me sitting on the deck out in my patio out front, stop, and there's extra chairs there. Stop and talk. We'll talk about the other things I know about the future of Reston, which are going to be publicized in the YouTubes that I'm working on, of which this will be one. So information what I'm attempting to share. Thank you very much. Have a good day.